On a Thursday afternoon in August 2003, 50 million people lost power. The cascade that did it ran through 8 states and a Canadian province in a matter of minutes. And the thing that failed was not a fuel supply or a shortage of power stations. It was a balance. A light switch is the least interesting machine in a house. It closes a circuit. But the instant it closes, it places an order on a machine the size of a continent, and that order has to be filled right now, not eventually, not on average across the day, but in the same second. Everything else about the grid follows from that one constraint. Most of the time the system hides. The grid working looks like nothing happening at all, so the only moments it becomes visible are the moments it slips. Those moments are rare, which is exactly why they get names and dates. What they reveal is that the calm is not the absence of effort. It is the product of continuous, second-by-second correction that never stops. So what is actually being corrected? Electricity is not sitting in the wires waiting to be used. There is no reservoir behind the wall socket. A transmission line is not a tank. It is closer to a drive shaft, transmitting motion from one end to the other. Which means that at any instant, the amount of electricity being generated across a network has to equal the amount being consumed, plus what is lost as heat on the way. Storage exists, but it sits at specific places on the network as its own kind of generator or load. It is not spread through the grid as a buffer. The signal that tells everyone whether the balance is holding is frequency. Across Britain, the grid alternates 50 times a second at 50 Hz. Across North America, it is 60. And every conventional generator connected to that network is physically turning in step with it, which is why frequency is not just a measurement. It is the rotation speed of an enormous number of machines that are all electrically locked together. That gives the system something rare, a single number available everywhere at once that says whether supply and demand are matched. When demand exceeds supply, the generators are being asked for more energy than they are producing, so they are dragged fractionally slower and frequency falls. When supply exceeds demand, they speed up and frequency rises. Nobody has to send a message. The physics is the message. Britain's system operator is required to hold frequency within 1% of 50 Hz, and in normal conditions aims to stay inside a much tighter band of about 0.2 of a Hz. Holding a number that tight, on a network where millions of people are independently switching things on and off, is not a matter of getting the day's total right. It is a control problem. Here is the decision that shapes everything downstream. Because the balance cannot be stored, it has to be defended in layers, each one faster than the human beings watching it. The first layer is not a decision at all, it is mass. A steam or gas turbine weighs hundreds of tons and spins at speed, and that spinning metal holds kinetic energy. When the grid is suddenly short, the machines give that energy up and slow down slightly rather than stopping dead. Grid engineers call this inertia, and it behaves roughly like a car's suspension absorbing a bump. It does not fix the problem, it slows down how fast the problem gets worse. That buys milliseconds and seconds. Actually, the second layer is automatic. Generators and batteries are contracted to change their output the moment frequency moves, with no instruction from anyone. In Britain, the fastest of these services begins responding within 1 second of a deviation and can hold that response for up to 15 minutes. Others take 10 seconds and run for an hour. They are not there to fix the imbalance, they are there to catch it. The third layer is reserve, which is plant already running below capacity, or sitting warm or interconnected from a neighboring country, that can be dispatched over minutes to actually close the gap and let the fast services stand down, ready for the next event. And the layer above all of that is planning, which means forecasting tomorrow's demand and tomorrow's weather, deciding which plants run, and holding enough headroom for the largest single thing that could plausibly fail. Actually, 4 timescales: milliseconds, seconds, minutes, hours. 4 different technologies solving what looks like the same problem, because no single one of them is fast enough and cheap enough to do all of it. Now the constraint tightens. The mix of things generating electricity is changing quickly. Solar and wind more than doubled their installed capacity worldwide between 2018 and 2023, and that changes the control problem in 2 ways at once. Output varies with weather, so forecasting matters more. And solar panels and wind turbines connect through power electronics rather than by spinning in lockstep with the grid, so they do not contribute inertia the way a steam turbine does. This is an operational problem, not a verdict. It does not mean a grid cannot run on renewable generation. It means the shock absorber has to be rebuilt out of different parts. Batteries respond in milliseconds, faster than any turbine. Inverters can be programmed to imitate the behavior of a spinning machine. Interconnectors move surplus between regions with different weather. Demand itself can be made to help. A freezer or a car charger that pauses for 30 seconds when frequency dips is, to the grid, indistinguishable from a small power station switching on. The international agency that tracks this work is direct about the stakes. Without deliberate investment in flexibility, a significant share of the wind and solar being built may not be usable at the moments it is generating. What happens when the layers are not enough is the part worth understanding, because it is not intuitive. A generator that stays connected to a grid whose frequency is collapsing can wreck itself, so it disconnects. A transmission line carrying more current than it is rated for will sag and fail, so its protection opens it. Every one of those actions is correct locally, but each one removes capacity from a system that was already short, which pushes the remaining machines harder, which trips the next protection. That is a cascade, not a failure of the safety systems, but the safety systems working exactly as designed, one at a time, in an order nobody planned. That is close to what happened in 2003. Earlier that afternoon, high-voltage lines in northern Ohio had sagged into trees and tripped, and the load they had been carrying moved onto the lines still standing. But at 6 minutes past 4, one of those tripped too, and not because anything had faulted. A protective relay saw the heavy flow passing through it and opened the line, which is exactly what it was built to do. 7 minutes later, more than 500 generating units had taken themselves offline. 61,800 megawatts of demand was dark across 8 states in Ontario, and some places waited for days for power. Actually, the honest way to describe grid operation is not making enough electricity. Producing enough energy over a day is an accounting problem, and it is largely solved. Matching it instant by instant, across thousands of generators and millions of consumers who never coordinate with each other and never will, is a control problem, and it is one of the largest continuous coordination problems that human beings run on any subject anywhere. It has no off switch, no maintenance window, and no version of itself where it is finished. So the switch on your wall, it is still the least interesting machine in the house. But it is not a request that gets queued. It is an instruction to a continent-sized machine that has already agreed in advance to answer it in under a second, and to keep supply and demand matched every single second after that, for as long as anyone wants the light on.